Okay, let's keep moving on with chapter 2. Okay, we talked about muni bonds. What does that stand for again? Municipal bond. So it's a bond that does what? It's a bond that a government issues in order to do what? Usually fund something like a, sewage plant or parks or schools or open space or, whatever urban issues. I don't know so much about urban bonds, but around here it's usually, wildlife, biodiversity, hunting, fishing kind of related stuff. Okay, and as I said, let's just go through this and see how much you remember this. If you have a federal bond and it generates interest, do you pay tax at the federal level on it? Yes. Do you pay tax on the state level? No. If you have a Billings Road bond, do you pay tax on the interest at the federal level? No. Do you pay tax on the Montana level? No. Because it's Montana. If you have a San Jose water bond, do you pay tax at the federal level? No. Do you pay tax at the Montana level? Yes. So essentially, and we were talking about that, and Joey answered the question correctly, which I said, is it going to be more beneficial if you're in the 35% bracket or the 15% bracket to invest in municipal bonds? And he said, well, obviously in the higher bracket, because your tax bill is going to be higher than mine, it's more beneficial to have tax-free interest. So what they're having us do here is helping us compare. So if I'm going to invest in something, and it's a corporate bond, paying 8%, or a muni bond paying 6%, can I just look at that and compare apples to apples? Is that apples to apples? Why not? Right. I can't just compare the 8 to the 6 and choose the 8 because I don't pay any tax on this guy. So how do I figure out which is the better return to me? That's what the question is. So you have to convert them both to an after-tax yield. So that's what we're doing here. In order to compare these two bonds to each other, we have to get both of these percentages after tax. Then we can say, okay, which is going to be more beneficial to me. So that's what we're doing here. So let's take a look at the calculation here. Sorry. So to get everything to the after-tax return, you're going to take the tax-free interest rate, which in that case was 6%, and divide it by 1 minus your tax rate. So this is the calculation. So let's try it. Gopal is in the 33% federal income tax bracket, and he invests in a Nashville City bond paying 6%. What rate will yield the same after-tax return as the muni bond? So you're going to take the 6% and divide it by 1 minus his tax rate. And then you can compare that number to the 8% from the corporate bond. So here's the math. 0.06 divided by 1 minus his tax rate, right? 100% minus 33%. So in reality, is he going to choose the 8% corporate bond or the 6% muni bond? The 6% muni bond, because he's really earning an 8.96% return because he's not paying any tax on it. He's not earning 6%. He's really earning 8.96% because he's got no tax bite. So when you compare, the whole hopefully lesson learned you got from this little illustration is when you're comparing a muni bond to a bond that's fully taxable, you've got to convert the muni bond to an after-tax return in order to make the comparison. Does that make sense? Questions? Unemployment, super easy, fully taxable for the feds, but what about Montana? The taxable for Montana? Good. On Montana, it's a reduction. And it's on your manual recap in the little column that says reduction. Okay, fringe benefits. We talked about this in payroll. What are these first two things? Dependent care accounts up to $5,000 a year. Medical flex spending accounts up to $2,500 a year. How does that work?
You put money in free account, tax free, and your dependent care goes through daycare. You don't pay tax for the savings.
Completely tax free. So I can put up to $5,000 a year into this account, and I don't pay any FICA or FIT when it goes in. And then when I pull it out to pay my daycare, I get dollar for dollar out of it. Right? So the government's helping subsidize my daycare.
Why would you not pay?
Same with flex for medical bills.
Do you pay FIT on that?
No FIT, no SIT, no FICA, nothing. So it's the best deal out there. It can result, obviously, in significant tax savings. We went through all this in payroll. If you need a refresher, go back and look at that. You should be able to work these numbers pretty easily. I'm not going to spend time again in here. And it's got that use it or lose it provision, doesn't it? If you don't use it, and I think they give you like even 45 days into the new year, then you lose the amount that you put in. Okay, lots of fringe benefits are excludable from income. And I'll tell you, when the IRS, or actually it's Congress that votes tax law, allows you to have tax-free fringe benefits, that means that they feel pretty strongly about it. Like what? Like if your employer pays for your life insurance premiums. So like here, our University of Montana pays for $20,000 of life insurance policies on this. It's obviously not going to take care of my family. It's going to pay my final costs. So the value of those premiums don't show up on my W-2. But if they'd insured me for $2 million, those premiums would show up on my W-2 because it's way more than 50 grand. Employee discounts, this is just like, I work at Rock and Ruby's and I get 15% off the products. Working condition fringe benefits, this is stuff like your employer pays for your continuing education, your employer pays for your physical therapy licensing, your employer pays for your, if you're a nurse, to get you up to speed in the new electronic medical records software, those kinds of things. Working condition, in other words, these are things that you have to do in order to maintain your job. That's not taxable to you. De minimis is Latin for immaterial. It's so small they're not going to track it. You get a ham at Christmas. You know, that's not going to show up here in a W-2. It's too small. Tuition reduction. If your employer pays for your tuition, and there's different rules for grad school versus undergrad. Value of membership in athletic facilities. Retirement planning services. We get to go once a year and meet with a retirement counselor. She looks at all your stuff and tells you to shift this and do that and tweak this. And okay, so all those things excludable, not on the W-2. Social Security benefits. This is a hugely controversial issue. Do we pay tax on our Social Security benefits when they come back to us when we retire? It does depend. It depends upon, and I'm going to loosely define these. You're pretty low income, you're kind of middle income, or you're pretty high income. And in retirement, that looks different than during your earning years, doesn't it? So if you're pretty low income, you don't have to pay tax on any of your benefits. If you're kind of middle income-y, you're going to have to pay tax on half of your benefits. And if you're pretty high income, you're going to have to pay tax on 85% of your benefits. It's a real point of contention for people. It's like, because by nature, tax theory says you shouldn't be taxed on your own money ever coming back to you. Because you put money into Social Security, and now you're paying tax on it coming back out. But I can tell you, if we took this away, what we think is a bad deficit now would be... Well, I'm going to show you. I think, do I have it here? Yeah. So basically, there's two filing statuses, married filing joint and everybody else. And if you're modified adjusted gross income plus half of your benefits is more than $25,000 if you're single or head of household or married filing separately, or $32,000 if you're married filing joint, then you're going to go to the simplified taxable Social Security worksheet. So like if all you get is Social Security, you're not going to pay tax on any of the benefits, right? I get a couple grand a month, Social Security, and that's what I live on. I don't have any other modified adjusted gross income. So half of my Social Security benefits is going to be under this. I'm not going to pay any tax on them. But if I also get a pension for $3 grand a month, or I also have investments that give me $3 grand a month, or rentals, then I'm probably going to have to pay tax on part of my Social Security benefits. Huh. The end. Okay. So, shall we take a look at the software?